The infamous Bernie Madoff was a master of the financial con job. You probably didn't fall victim to his deception, but have you ever purchased a product that didn't live up to its claims? How did that make you feel? I suspect that you might have been angry or at the very least frustrated. And while not necessarily true, you may have even felt that you were conned. Being led to believe one thing and discovering the truth is very different is the basis of a con. The perpetrator of the con gains control when the victim accepts a lie as the truth. In essence, the victim voluntarily submits to the suggestions of the con. Without knowing it, victims then act in a way that is against their own best interests. The trick is to find the victim's vulnerability and exploit it. In order for a con or confidence game to be successful, the perpetrator must gain the victim's trust. This is done by providing just enough truth to be believable. The perpetrator may act as if they don't understand something and will then interject a lie or deception. The trap is set when the victim accepts the lie as being the truth. I'm Dr. Rich Masek, the author of Ideolatry, God is Not Your Problem. And today, we will discuss how a serpent pulled off the ultimate con, the con job of the ages. The serpent is first introduced as it begins to talk with Eve, as we read in Genesis chapter 3, verses 1 through 3, from the Contemporary English Version. The snake was sneakier than any of the other wild animals that the Lord God had made. One day, it came to the woman and asked, "Did God tell you not to eat fruit from any tree in the garden?" The woman answered, "God said we could eat fruit from any tree in the garden, except the one in the middle. He told us not to eat fruit from that tree or even to touch it. If we do, we will die." The first step of the con was to create uncertainty as the serpent said, "Did God tell you?" This phrase was intended to discover what Eve knew about God's instruction. Then the serpent finished its question with a challenge to God's word when it said, "Did God tell you not to eat fruit from any tree in the garden?" The serpent knew that this was the opposite of what God actually said. The intent was to cause confusion and doubt in Eve's mind about God and His word. Eve corrected the serpent by saying that they could eat of all of the trees except one particular tree. But then she added something. She said that they were forbidden to even touch that particular tree. Eve's response revealed her lack of comprehension of God's instruction, because God told Adam that he and Eve could freely eat of every tree except the one special tree. However, God did not say anything about not touching the special tree. As a matter of fact, Adam was told to keep and dress the garden in Genesis chapter 2, verse 15, as we read in the Bible in basic English. "And the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to do work in it and take care of it." Taking care of the garden would have necessitated Adam touching the forbidden tree. Although Eve does not appear to have fully understood God's instructions, by correcting the misstatement of the serpent, she gained confidence in her errant knowledge and her embellishment. Now the serpent was armed with the fact that Eve did not completely understand God's instruction, and it pounced on her confusion. The serpent went on to make a statement that contradicted the truth of God's word in Genesis chapter 3, verse 4, from the Good News translation. The snake replied, "That's not true. You will not die." This statement cast further doubt in Eve's mind regarding God and His motives for forbidding them to eat from the special tree. However, there is a major difference between the word used to describe God's instruction found in Genesis chapter 2, verse 17, and the serpent's statement in Genesis chapter 3, verse 4. God's instruction was in the singular tense of the word, meaning to die. But the serpent is described as using the plural form of the same word. The distinction is that the singular form that God used means to begin the process of eventual spiritual and physical death. However, the plural form, as used by the serpent, implies immediate physical death. This is where the true deception took place. The serpent contradicted God's statement with just enough truth to distort its assertion. It was true that Adam and Eve would not die an immediate spiritual and physical death. However, their actions in eating the fruit of the forbidden tree immediately began the process of their eventual physical and spiritual death. In Genesis chapter 3, verse 5, the serpent went on to say, "For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil." This is also a true statement, and the ultimate con was in full play. This statement was framed in a way that questioned God's motives. The serpent was effective in disparaging God by implying that God was trying to keep something desirable and valuable from both Eve and Adam. So what was God's motive and what was his plan? I invite you to read Ideolatry to learn more about God's character and nature. Check it out at ideolatry.com, where you can read my blog and download the free chapter. And I hope you will join me for the next episode, God's Recovery Plan for the Ultimate Con, where we will discover God's motivation, when the first sin was actually committed, and what God has done about it.